It's going to go fast.
Cool.
You know it's going to go
yeah,
fast.
It's going to be cool. Hi guys, Brett here from Hearns Hobbies, and I've got Matthew Jenkins with me, and today we are going to be building a BD11. Now, for those of you who don't know Matt, he's our 1/10th Onroad Victorian crew chief, so he runs our Onroad team down here in Victoria. And this car is actually going to be pretty special and relevant to Matt because it's going to be Noah's car, is that right?
Yeah, Noah's going to upgrade.
Yep,
So
Noah's going to upgrade to a new BD11 and he's going to start racing it. So I thought we'd take the opportunity to jump into the studio and put one together for you. So Matt's already been running one of these for a couple of weeks now.
Yep.
That said, it's probably been on track, what, 2 or 3 times?
Yeah, not very
so
much.
It's not like the car's been out for a huge amount of time and a huge amount of development. But yeah, he has been a Yokomo racer for years now. He's been with us.
Yep. Both off-road and on-road.
Both on-road and off-road. So together we're going to stumble our way through it and build ourselves a BD11.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get stuck in, mate. This is brand new. Nothing here. That is still factory sealed. Here is the knife, mate.
Let's go ahead.
I'm not allowed near sharp objects. You know that.
Yes. Bit of a danger.
Bit of a danger.
Yep.
Oh.
There we go.
You are much better looking than the other bloke that's usually sitting in here building stuff with me too. I'm just saying.
Just saying?
I don't know. No, thanks for coming. What are we greeted with?
Alright, we've got our arena address, and I guess it's a little invitation. It's
almost like the Willy Wonka thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
like
the golden...
That is pretty special, the golden ticket.
Yep, the golden ticket.
I wonder if that... I don't actually, my Japanese isn't so good. I wonder if that entitles us to a free race day. That would be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
That would be very cool, yep. Yeah.
I'm sure if we called them up and tell them we were coming from Australia, I'm sure that they'd accommodate.
Oh, I'm pretty sure they would, yes.
That is super cool.
Yeah.
Alright, and what else have we got there?
So there's a little amendment to the instructions here. So obviously the roll centre spacer.
Yep.
They've just put some supplementary instructions in here as well. So I guess when we get up to this point, we'll need to
so it looks like they've given the car a bit of anti-squat.
Yep.
Now, so you often find it's not a big change. It's obviously just a tuning part, which is really cool that they've taken the time, the effort, and the cost to put this in to make sure that the BD11 is going to be as good as it can out of the box.
Yep.
That's really cool. What else have we got in there, mate?
So bags and bags and bags. So
yeah.
One thing that after building the first one, I guess that's really notable as a change to this kit is the screw pack.
Yeah, I actually noticed that. I recently did a YZ2 DDM 3.1.
Yep.
And it had exactly the same thing. So all the screws were in one pack.
That's right. And it's got a gauge that you can use as a reference.
Yep.
That you don't have to necessarily go back or flip through pages. You can use this as a gauge to make sure you're using the right fastener.
I sort of prefer the packet by packet method, but you know what I mean? Much for muchness. It's not something I usually rush doing anyway, these builds, so yeah.
I guess it just depends on, I guess, how you build. If you're in a hurry and you think you'll build it in one sitting, this isn't such a big deal. But yeah, if you don't have the time needed to do it in one sitting, then yeah, certainly opening all of the screws, etc., might not be ideal.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, if you're doing it over a couple of sessions, like will be, it can be a little bit tedious.
But yeah, just have your parts trays and...
That's right. So we've got our parts trays. Got our parts trays here, and we'll just get them organised. And this is where Simon usually yells at me finding screws. You know, I'll be honest. What else have we got there, mate? I want to start sorting screws out.
Okay, so...
in a vain attempt.
So we've got a beautiful, brand new, undamaged chassis. Unscratched. Honestly, these do look really nice. As I said, I think in our introduction...
And they've taken your namesake as well.
They have?
Yeah, well, they've gone for Matt Carbon.
Matt Carbon.
Yep,
Yeah,
they were thinking of you, mate.
No, they might have been. Yeah, it's certainly something that you're greeted with, and it's a really nice piece of carbon, to be honest. Even their machining, I think we said this in our introduction to our
a quick
overview.
Because we did the unboxing of your one. Yeah,
that's right. Then I went home and built it for the next day.
Yeah,
which was pretty cool.
And it was really cool.
Yeah. So as I said, the finish on this is really, really nice. There's a few tiny differences between the chassis here and I guess the previous car.
Yep.
There's a few different scallops and shapes that they've managed to kick in, but essentially they've kept with their traditional wheelbase and those sorts of things, I'd suggest. And they've just, I think that there's perhaps a different grade of material here that may offer a different flex opportunity as well. But it would be nice to know why they've gone for a matte finish, or if it's just cosmetic. Would be nice to know if we could dig into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And top deck and the pivot for the top deck in there. But
now the machining on this is just beautiful. The CNC machining that they've got here. It is really, really nice. Beautifully countersunk, looks really nice. Right, what do we got?
So then we've got, I guess, the important bit is the order of the build.
Well, hey!
So
The instructions.
Instructions, all important. So typically, and there's some really fancy stuff here, some stickers and
What do we got here?
other optional other cars.
Some more sales stuff coming up. Oh, front wheel drive, hey? I wonder when they'll be doing a BD11 front wheel drive. That'll have to be on the horizon.
Yeah, that'd be very cool.
I know you'll put your hand up for one of them.
Yes, absolutely. So, as per every Yokomo on-road car I've ever built, spool and diffs first.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty common that you do start at the centre of the car and move your way out. And you can't get anywhere more central, I suppose, than the diff and the spool.
Yep.
So let's have a look. Let's jump in to
bags
step
are numbered. Bags are numbered to steps. So step 1.
We can start at bag number 1, I suppose.
Yep.
Well, careful, mate. I've been left with a knife. I've been left with a knife. Alright. How good is this new pit mat? I'm really excited.
It's cool
We
colour
thought
too.
because I had such a special visitor in today that we'd crack open a new pit mat.
Yeah, rubberised.
Yeah,
parts tray.
Don't tell the other guy that I usually build cars with. He might get a bit jealous.
Yeah.
Alright. I can see already that I'm going to have to go finding some screws.
Okay. So you've got some bearings there. You've got the outdrives.
We've got some 9-step snippers here, mate, if you want to tidy up those
Eccentrics.
Those centrics, yeah. So, what screws do we need? Does it give me a number? No. 3x10 button head. So, I've got to go here to my cross-reference chart. 3x10, bag number 5. Here we go. Bag number 5. Again with the knife. This is really getting risky, mate. It's been 3 times now and there's no blood to be spilled.
We got the first aid kit on hand for you, we'll be fine.
It's just a numbers game, mate. So,
I will grab the knife off you and I'll just trim this up a bit better.
you can have one on your side. I've actually got 2 knives here.
Oh, well, you've been left with 2.
I know. And I've got a little bit of XTR Loctite here. I don't know about you, but I like to put a drop on my
spool screw.
Put a drop on
yep.
the spools.
Yep.
The spool screw.
Absolutely.
We've got our 9 steps drivers. Better arm yourselves with one of these. You'll be needing one of these. Got to here, mate. What are you doing over there? Don't go all quiet on me. Do you need something?
No, just doing a little bit of trimming. Just, I don't know, as you've really got to take the time to do these kits properly. I mean, there's a lot of engineering goes into these kits. There's no point rushing a build, and there's it's really important that you trim all of the flashing off from the parts trees.
Yep.
Because that can have an effect on, I guess, the final build. So you might find that if you don't do it, if you don't trim some of the flashing off, you might get some binding or some interference when you're doing a build. So yeah, it's really important to do that.
There we go. Got this one here.
Look like you've done this before, Brett.
Well, I'm just following the instructions, and like I said, it is plastic safe Loctite.
Yep.
So don't need to go too crazy. Now we have to put this ring on, and I suggest we probably break open the super glue for this one. And we've got some fine tips there. Again, super glue is not my strong point.
You're not good at gluing?
No, so I'd be lucky to get through this episode with both eyes open.
Okay, so I'll find you glued to the bench a bit later.
That's right. Opposing fingers, you know, you name it.
Yep.
Just working my way across this spool, just doing it up bit by bit. There's no need to just reef on it straight away. Here we go.
Okay.
Alright.
So outdrive's on.
Outdrives are on.
So the diff ring, the spool ring, you can see there's a recess in the ring. Recess goes inward.
Yep.
And snaps on.
And snaps on.
Alright.
You're going to put a little bit of glue in there?
We'll put a drop of glue here and there, yes. So, what's your recommendation, Brett?
Yeah, I would just put like 3 or 4 drops around the face. And again, it's not 100% necessary to the build.
Moves fast, this glue.
It is super thin and brand new. What do you need?
Yep.
If you want to glue...
Moves very quick.
If you want a glue applicator, you can put some drops on here for a little bit better control. And then we can just put it on like so. So look at this, teamwork makes the dream work.
Go one more.
One more little bit, like so.
Yep.
There we go, that'll do. Again, it will snap on.
There we go. And just run your fingers around it.
Yeah, make sure that it's nice and central.
That's right.
It doesn't actually recommend gluing. So that is a...
That's a hot tip.
There is a Jenkins hot tip. I'm sure this build's going to be full of them.
Absolutely. Full of something.
Well, hopefully it's somewhat entertaining.
Yep.
And
as well as education.
If nothing else, I'm entertained. So
right.
It's more about me than anybody else, these shows.
Okay, that's fine.
Oh, you know what I love to do?
Something else?
I love to put a little bit of paint marker on these, but we'll do that before we install them.
Okay, yep.
You know, before we install them, I like to put paint marker on the dots, and then that way...
Yeah. So there's dots to show the high side, or the low side, whichever way you want to do it. So there's some dots here on the eccentric.
Because I'm coming to an age where I have to squint sometimes, or you know what I mean? So just put a little bit of your chrome paint, whatever colour you want, dots on there, and it'll just make identifying easier because there's lines and measurements on the bulkheads.
Yes.
To ensure that your spool, because that's how you get your belt tension, and you want to make sure that it's straight. Bearings feel good?
Yep. Bearings feel free, they feel even. So that's just one little thing to do too, is just to make sure that the bearings do feel free.
Yep.
And that you've got, like I said, you've trimmed out that excess flashing and you've got no interference.
Beautiful.
Alright.
Beautiful.
Right, so one spool built.
One spool built. Alright.
Bag
now
number 2.
We're onto the diff. What's the diff? So that's a differential unit. They use a hard resin gear in these. And I haven't found in the past, I haven't built a BD11, but I haven't found in the past that they need too much hand finishing. But I've actually got my sanding sticks over there. Can you pass me a sanding stick? What have we got here?
There you go.
Can I go the other one, please, sir? Here we go. Yeah, I'm a bit aggressive. I need something with a bit of grur. So this is our 9 steps sanding stick. And we've got a bit of 400 grit here. And I'm just going to run over the top of the bevel gear just to ensure that there's no dags or teeth on the cast, and it all looks silky smooth. I mean, it will all run in anyway, but we want to ensure that Noah gets the best car that we can build him.
Yep, absolutely. So just opening all the little bags. So the diff build's pretty good actually. All the little bags are, keeping everything separate. And actually this part, I don't know, just the O-rings. So I actually like to lubricate the O-rings in the bag. Yep. It's just a nice easy way to make sure you squish all of the grease around the O-ring without getting it all over your hands.
That's a good trick. That is a good trick. Usually I plonk them in there and I fish them out and I usually lose them, and yeah. Yep. Now the reason that we use O-ring grease, well, my best understanding for people is to actually seal it away from the silicon oil.
Correct.
Because silicon oil and silicon O-rings tend to meet each other, and the O-rings over time will start to grow and swell, causing just undue friction.
Correct.
So they won't leak and they won't go hard and leak in a hurry, but they will do the opposite and swell. So by lubricating them, we're giving them protective feel.
And the shaft actually runs through it as well. Yep. So it just offers a little bit of lubrication between the outdrive and the O-ring as well, which prevents premature wear.
Yep. And I actually put a little bit on the outdrive as well, where it goes through the casing, because the metal actually spins in this casing like a bush. I'll put a little bit of white lubricant on there. A bit of lithium.
You can see there the O-rings are pretty well greased up, and no residue on your hands, and that can just sit there until you're ready. See.
So I've usually got it in my ear, in my nose, in my moustache. It's usually everywhere, that stuff.
It's not all that doesn't end up in your moustache.
And here we go. All right, I think that's there's no burrs or anything on there. Where is my listening grease actually? Now you've built more of these diffs than I have.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing? What's the first step?
All right, so I generally start with the cup. I call it a cup.
Yep.
So the cup half.
Because we're going to suppose get it on the scales and get it weighed, yeah.
That's right. So we need to put the.
While you're doing that, I'm just going to take the opportunity and just apply a little bit of grease on this. And I'm not using tons of grease because it'll all just get pushed out anyway. Like so. Enough on there. And enough on there.
Just make some room.
And we won't be using kit oils in this build.
No.
Because this car was designed and engineered primarily for modified.
Yep.
I suppose. So the kit setup does sort of lean towards higher traction, a lot more horsepower.
That's right.
Young Noah will be running it in the 21.5 class.
Yep. That's
so
correct.
we're going to go with a 3,000 weight diff oil.
Yep.
As a good starting point.
That's right. So first thing I do is drop the O-ring into the cup. You can just use a nut driver or something to actually, or a 3.5mm nut driver to actually push it home. Okay, so that's pushed home, and we can take our out drive. Now for 21.5 racing, you might want to consider the option parts at this point.
The lightweight
out drives. At this point, I won't be doing that for Noah. He's still at the point where the car needs to be maybe a little bit more robust.
Yep.
So he will get them eventually, but at this stage, for this build, not at the moment.
Yeah. When he gets a rebuild before the Nationals or something.
That's right, that's right. So just make sure that O-ring's seated using the nut driver all the way home. And
make sure that there's no dirt and crud in your nut driver either.
That's right, yeah. So make sure
it's going to be putting it straight into your diff case.
And then the large washer.
Large washer.
Again, you can use the nut driver, push it down. Now there's a little trick with a set of pliers here to get the cross pin in.
There you go, mate. These 9 steps needle nose pliers here, you'll love them.
Okay.
You sort of have to line it up, and it makes it even trickier when you're trying to do it on camera, these things.
Yeah.
You've painted on camera, now you're assembling a diff on camera.
Correct. So you've got to pick the right keyway in the diff too, because only one of them or two of them are low enough to actually get the cross pin in.
Yep.
So cross pins in, take the diff gear and seat it. Alright, just give that a little light spin just to make sure that there's no I guess burr feeling or anything like that. It's nice and free. Obviously with that bit of extra grease there, that's offering a nice action as well.
Yep.
But essentially that's the first stage.
And it drops on over the pin as well.
That's right, so you just make sure it's all the way home. Okay, so that's the first stage of the diff build. At this point now I'd be putting in the right amount of oil.
You put in the right amount now?
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yep, I sure do. So we've got some corner scales here.
Yep, put them on camera so folks can say, I want to see if you measure it right. 1.4 grams, it's a very accurate number, isn't it?
Yep, so you can zero, so put your diff on your...
Yep.
Some people have got, you can use your corner scales or you can use the smaller set of...
I'm going to jump in there a bit closer, mate. I'm going to come right in here.
Yep.
While I was moving it while you're zeroing it. There we go. We can see here that we've got one scale on there, the rear left, and it's
just
super
zero
sensitive.
Yep, and when you put the diff unit on there, obviously make sure you zero the scale.
Yep.
And this is where I put in the right amount of diff oil.
And we've gone for XTR flavour oil.
Yep, XTR, and because it's 21.5 racing, again, you've said it's 3,000 weight. So I think it's 1.4 grams, or 1.5, sorry, 1.5 grams.
1.5 grams.
So just let it run in, don't necessarily need to go terribly fast.
And if you do put too much in, like I probably have done in the past, you can just dig it out with your hobby knife or your clean Allen key.
So we're at just over 1 gram now. So these scales are really nice and accurate.
Yeah.
And just remember, your scales need to catch up with your workflow as well. So not necessarily going to measure at the same rate that it's being applied. So there's always the opportunity for what's dripping off the nozzle to add to the weight as well. So just, oops, so yeah.
Classic overpull from Matty. Hey?
Always too enthusiastic.
Hey?
Mate. Always too enthusiastic.
Couldn't get it in there fast enough. Here we go. Alright. So we're 0.1 over. And I reckon it's going to be about 1 scoop. How many scoops are we looking for?
Probably another.
Now what you really want to avoid, I feel that I'm not getting anything out at all. Because I'm used to working with a broken tip hobby knife. Alright, more.
I'll just resettle it. So it's still quite heavy. Yep.
Still a bit over. Just going to take that off camera. And one thing you want to really avoid at all costs is getting diff oil
in the screw holes.
Correct. Because it just doesn't compress and it will strip your little threads in there before you can actually torque down the face of the diff cover.
Look at that. I should have let you do it from the beginning.
No, we're still over. We're close.
We're very close.
And this is how precise these cars have got these days, huh?
Yep.
Like 0.1 of a gram, like it's a drop, isn't it?
There's hardly anything in it. There we go.
There we go.
Settled.
We have settled. We are on 1.5 grams.
Okay.
So if you don't have car scales, yeah, you probably really need to get something quite accurate.
For touring car racing, it's very, very. I guess it's a very good idea to have corner scales. However, if you don't have corner scales, there are other ways to do it. If you've got like a small scale, like what do they call those?
Kitchen scales.
Kitchen scales or something like that.
It helps when you're setting up. It can be like where your electrics placement or your final setup, your tweak, that sort of stuff.
Even adding weight to your car, so you know to get your car balanced.
Yep.
So now just building the bevel gears onto the diff cross, I guess.
Yep.
And I think it's 1 washer or 2 washers per side.
2 washers per side.
2 washers per side.
I'm quite surprised they've gone with 2 washers actually. There you go. And you can build it 4 gear, 2 gear. Now do you use the O-ring and the gasket in yours? Because I've heard various...
Look, I'll just drop this in while I've still got it precariously balanced. Alright, so...
Look at that.
That's dropped in nicely. Look, it really depends how the diff goes together. I've run the diff without the O-ring before and I've had no leaking issues, but obviously still use the paper gasket.
Yep.
There are times when you're putting diffs together, whether the O-ring swells over time, if you do a rebuild,
can tear or not seat properly.
That's right. I haven't had an issue with leaking diffs without an O-ring, but I guess we'll try and build it today with the O-ring.
Yep, whatever goes, mate. It's your car.
Yep.
Like I said, I know that there's a mixed... I like to put a little bit of assembly lube onto my O-rings on my gasket surfaces. I don't know about you. Do you usually do that?
do it on the mating half, but we'll just see if this seats nicely first. Yep, we can always drag that back up. Well, you can get grotty.
I'll get grotty. So I've just got a little bit of assembly grease here that I like to use. It's rubber safe. Again, you don't need much on there. Like so, and that should help it just glide together.
The other thing is, I usually put a bit of assembly grease on one side of the paper gasket as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yep. So and that just holds it in place while you're putting the diff halves together.
I actually do it on both sides.
Both sides. Yep.
But that's me. Everybody's different, and there's no, I suppose, I mean, there is a right or wrong way to build it, but everybody's got their own touches and what works for them.
Right.
You know.
So while you're doing that, I'll put the other diff half together.
You know, I know some people actually take the anodized coating off the out drives, so it's chrome smooth where it runs through the bush to try and, you know,
reduce the friction.
Yeah, reduce the friction somewhat. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's all these 1%ers, I suppose, that really make the difference in the overall package.
That's right.
And I think that's the enjoyment out of RCs. You can put as much or as little time into it as you really want to.
Yeah, time permitting.
You know, time permitting, enthusiasm, you know, what you expect out of your equipment.
And I guess different people enjoy different aspects of it too, don't they?
Yeah, some people really enjoy painting.
Yeah.
They're lunatics. And some people really enjoy building, and some people just want to go out and smash laps and burn tyres.
I'll just grab the cloth there, please.
Certainly.
Thanks. So I guess that's the two diff halves built. Now, what's really important is there's actually a keyway on the diff. So if we can just
do you want to zoom in? I can zoom in even more, mate. We have the technology here.
Okay, so we'll just move. So
make sure your nails are done.
Yep. So if we take a look, I can just point it out here. What's really important is the keyway here.
Yep.
Because on the mating half, there's actually a locator, which is also here. Now, if you, I guess all four holes are actually symmetrical, so you can put the diff halves together wrong. And what will happen is this little keyway will push the diff halves open, right, and then the oil will leak out.
Oil will leak out, and it'll never sit right.
That's right.
You'll have to put new casings.
One of the things I generally do is I'll put a mark on the outside of the diff case. All right, so we'll put a mark on the outside of the housing. Thank you. And that's just to let it dry.
Yep.
And that's just to give you some, I guess, a guide rather than trying to look inside the diff half as you're assembling it. Now, what's really important too, as we put this together, is that you try not to let the gasket move.
Yep.
We'll just try and set that a little bit more. And obviously make sure the holes are lined up.
And it shouldn't be a force fit. It should go together rather
nicely. That's right.
And if it doesn't, it can just take a bit of time and persistence. You definitely don't want to be on the end of a Makita just trying to ram it in, because it will not work out for you.
No. And doing this on camera is actually not that easy, because you can't. So just make sure your diff gears seat nicely, and it should push together.
How's it looking, mate?
Not bad at all. Yep, I reckon we can start there. Yep, okay.
Concentration.
Yep. So what's really important too is to make sure when you look into the holes there with the diff oil, make sure no diff oils run into the screw holes, because you'll get that hydraulic lock effect and you'll strip the screws.
Yeah, before it does any.
That's right. Oopsie.
I'm here, mate, just yell at me.
Yell at you?
Well, you know what I mean, if you need a hand, or that's what I'm here for.
Sure thing.
I'm just taking the opportunity to mark up these spool out drives.
Oh, yep.
I'm going to reach around the front here. See, that didn't sound right, did it? And I'll get my little nippers.
So again, important as you're assembling the diff, don't pull down the screws as you're putting one in at a time. Just get them in, let them cut in. Don't tighten them at this point, because you
really
want
just want the surfaces to mate.
That's right.
And make sure that the torques are applied evenly across the face of the surface.
Correct.
You know, and that'll make sure that there's no warpage in the plastics, there's no leak. And that everything does it really nice.
And just as you're putting it together, once you've got a couple of screws in, there's no harm in just making sure the diff action's correct, because sometimes you can put the diff together and the gears may be sitting on top of each other rather than in the slots, which may prevent
That's right. Or you might
going together correctly.
You might find that you actually need to reshim it from the instructions. Instructions,
right.
You know,
it's a guide.
It's definitely a guide, but there's nothing wrong with if these, you know, I'll bring the book over into shot. So if you found that your diff action was too tight or a bit notchy, then you might only want to run one of these shims.
Correct.
You know, under the bevels. And that's just a bit of trial and error. So there's no two kits perfectly the same.
So just run around the screws a couple of times. Just tighten them up a little bit more, a bit of a tweak more.
So now we're going to move on to the center drive unit, the center pulley assembly, which includes the spur gear. Okay. Now the spur gear, the factory fitted spur gear for this is 110 tooth. Young Noah here is not going to be running modified, so we're going to take the opportunity. He's going to run 21.5, so it's going to require vastly different gearing.
Correct.
Modified will be up at 7.5, 8 to 1.
Yep.
Whatever, with a 4.5, 5.5 turn motor. Whereas young Noah with the 21 is going to be somewhere in the vicinity of 3 to 1.
3 to 1, that's
thereabouts.
Right.
So for that, we'll be using a 84 tooth and a 84 tooth spur gear and a 49 tooth 64 pitch pinion gear.
Correct.
And it'll keep it all running nice and efficient.
Yep.
Both Axon branded. The factory fitted spur gears are Axon.
That's right.
And they're quite a beefy unit, and they're really hard plastic,
yep.
which is really good for efficiency and drive and quality. That said, on a rougher track they can chip away, but that's the joys of running modified.
Yep.
When you're running that much horsepower, you sort of tend to use just as many spur gears as you do sets of tyres.
Correct.
You know?
So it's important to have spares. Always important to have a spare spur gear.
But the 21.5, this little one here, that should last for forever and a day.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Unless you're unlucky, you get a stone picked up or something like that.
All right, so let's get to the assembly. We'll get this spur gear out the way. We can have a look on the book here. Now, they have changed it a little bit from the previous BD10. They've changed the shimming arrangement, haven't they?
Yep. So previously the shims were put on the dowels, the posts that actually hold the two pulley halves together. So now, and you could get, as the parts wear, it didn't have a lot of material into the mating half.
Yeah.
Which meant after a little bit of time with some wear, they could start slipping.
And it wasn't hugely common, and it wasn't probably the factory guys who always have fresh gear.
Yep.
But for the average club racer, you know what I mean, once they had 6 or 8 months use on their car, they'd wonder why all of a sudden that they'd lose, you know, rear wheel drive, or the car felt a bit funny. Yeah. And it was as simple as that. So
yep. And look, so basically the shimming's gone from being on the dowel here to being under the C-clip once you've put it in.
Yep.
So
that's squashing it together more, yeah.
So that's a small change, realistically, which is probably for the positive.
Yep.
So
we can go ahead and mate it up.
So we should also talk about gluing.
Yes, we'll glue the face of this pulley. Now again, it's just a press fit from the factory over it, because it is a billet machined and anodized pulley. So they then press on a ring or a guide for the belt, the rear belt. However, under immense loads or accidents, or even if the top deck hits the pulley, then it has been known to flick off come off, detach itself, and it will usually cost you a DNF usually. So we'll just take the precaution, and we'll give it a few drops of glue.
So and it's the half that has the recess. Okay, so there's two halves. You only need to glue one of the halves. It's the half that has the recess, which goes towards the inside of the bulkhead.
Yeah,
goes on the bulkhead side.
Goes on the bulkhead side. Yeah.
Or motor mount side. So just some CA glue. I've got a really fine tip here.
This is where I usually get my fingers stuck to my head. I've got a rag ready.
So just nice and slowly. So you just a dob and work it around.
Yeah. Don't get it in that bearing face, mate.
No.
That's where you run into problems if you get it into the bearing recess.
Yeah, the bearing won't seat properly.
The bearing won't read. Now, while you're doing that, mate, I'm just going to take the opportunity to zoom right in here. See the doctor in work.
So sometimes you don't need to put a lot on, and you just use the tip or the nozzle to actually work it around.
Yep.
You just don't want too much material there, because you really don't want that tipping over the edge. Alright, and then once that's done...
Oh, look out, drop it on the bench.
Once that's done, you can actually just wipe the face nice and clean.
Look at that.
And that's a little hot tip to make sure you
That
get
is a Jenkins hot tip.
years of motoring.
Look at that. That's right, years of motoring. That's all it needs.
Yeah, just a little bit of extra to keep it all together. So then grab the other half, obviously.
Stack it up like a sandwich.
Yep, so you drop your spur through the dowels.
Yep, I've zoomed right in there, mate, so we can, we can sort of see.
And
we can see the protruding really, it's only like, what, 2 mil?
not even.
Yep.
Yep, not
and
even.
that's where there would be shims before.
Correct.
So
Correct.
you just have to be mindful of that to make sure that you do get good purchase.
That's right. And there's not a lot, I mean, you're talking about a recess that's in this flange.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only, what, 2 mil thick?
That's right.
All right, so there's not, you do have to push this together nicely, and it does seat really nicely.
It's beautifully machined.
Yep.
Like the tolerances are phenomenal. Then we put a bit of a shim and the C-clip on. Let's see how good you are with your C-clips, mate.
So I usually,
Yep.
so make sure it's pushed all the way home.
Yep.
And the C-clip, being such a large C-clip,
Yep. Just to get it started.
just get it started in the C-clip groove. Pair of pliers.
Yep. And shoot it. Proceed to shoot it across the room.
Absolutely. Nice and
No.
slow.
Look. Click.
There we go.
That is in.
That is in.
That is in.
It's thrown away too. So you just give it a little wiggle. Make sure that
Give us a look. It didn't even scratch the pulley. That is really good. Now, after years of racing and you definitely probably bound to have a few marks on there.
yeah. And look, removing it is actually the time, I guess, where you start to mark it.
But especially if
Removing
you're trackside.
Yep, that's right. You're usually in a hurry.
Yep. And the last thing you're worried about is scratching your anodize. But with that shim here now, it actually should be less prone to.
It's less fiddly now. You're balancing one shim rather than 3 shims. It's actually a nice little change.
Yeah. Beautiful. I do love the look of a 21.5 spur gear. Hey, they just look.
It's going to go
they
fast.
look
You know
cool.
it's going to go fast.
Yeah, it's
right?
going to be cool. All right.
So next
at-
step is the bearing in the back, all the way home. Now this step here is really quite important.
Just having a look at the instructions here too. So I've got a couple of little shims here, it looks like.
Yep. So these shims are 0.2 shims, so they're quite thin. So just make sure they drop all the way home before you push the bearing in. Being so thin and the barrel being so deep,
Yep.
they can actually stand up a little bit, and pushing the bearing home, you can bend them. They really bend quite easily. Sometimes you might use something to just make sure it's all the way home without forcing it. Yep,
Beautiful.
nice. And there you have it. That's your centre pulley assembly. All done.
All right. That is beautiful. Now, step 5. Step 5 is moving on towards the chassis and stuff. So I think we might call this episode here. In this episode, obviously, step 1, 2, and 3 and 4.
So
We've covered the front spool.
Yep.
We've covered
The diff build.
the center drive pulley unit and the diff build. So I hope you guys have enjoyed watching. Yeah, I'm Brett from Hearns. This is Matthew Jenkins. We're building a BD11, and that was episode 1.
Well done.
Join us as we continue on episode 2 and all the future builds. Yeah. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks
Take
a lot.
care.
See ya.